Welcome back to the show. Today's topic: never quitting or never giving up. So, I want to emphasize, I know it's kind of a weird question, and maybe not even weird, it's probably your mind jumps to like a positive outlook, right? So, like, never quitting or never giving up, you think, oh, it's going to be an inspirational message, which at the end of the day, I hope it does, or it is a positive message, but I want to kind of dive into it in a different light, but acknowledging the message that we more or less already know, right? So, like, why do men quit, right? And we're just going to focus, I mean, I try to focus mostly on the men aspect of it. This is intended to be a male dominated show, but my mind sometimes tends to bring in women and genderize it as in a neutral, because sometimes the numbers don't need to separate the genders that much. But anyways, without another digression, so why do men quit? Well, we're known, the one thing that jumps out when you first think of it, like, if you're proposed that question, like, why do men quit, or why do you think men quit, we jump to sports, right? So you think of maybe like a boxing match when someone just went after they were defeated thoroughly, they go back to their corner and they don't want to come back out. Or when you are watching a sporting event and you see the teams, not, so you could tell that the energy is no longer there, they stop trying, and the other team is just blowing them out, destroying them. When the Olympics happen, so we without going too much into example after example, we tend to jump into the sports realm because that's the easiest thing probably that our mind jumps into, as opposed to the last time we quit, which is the more important part, or the more important question, where we should having most of our energy or mind going to, not into the, I don't want to say fantasy, because that's definitely true. We definitely do see those things quitting, but it's more important when we give up on ourselves and understanding why we did that. So when we ask the question, like, why do men quit? The answer could be many things, right? But for the most part, we, again, I think I've mentioned it before, our mind tends to want to protect us, so it's going to give us the answer that doesn't hurt us the most, that is the one that is going to kind of allow it to make the circuit connection to the next thing. Because if not, you get kind of stuck somewhere, which is where, depending on what situation it is, in what aspect in your life, you get those nagging questions, the what ifs, the what if I would have done, that kind of thing, the what if ism, if you want to call it, as far as an ism. So your mind wants to do a connection, so it connects it to just something that it feels good, like, right, like, oh, I just quit because it didn't feel good, or I quit because I was too exhausted, or I quit because it took too much time, whatever the reason is to why we personally quit on something. It generally just does it to where we feel it hurts or our mind doesn't, where it hurts the less, so we could just get healed and get past that, and not let ourselves, or not let our body enter into a state of perpetual depression. And I've talked about that before in other podcasts. So anyways, so when we think about things like why do men quit, it's never the truly uncomfortable thing. And when we really evaluate, like, why we quit something when we were in our early 20s, and you hear it a lot when you talk to a gentleman that's in his 70s, 80s, and you kind of hear it through their own experience, and how they quit on something too soon, or they quit on something too early. and they just, they regretted an action that they did, and it wasn't necessarily a romantic thing, or one or the other. It was a vast experience and answers, which it did include relationships and love. Some were financial, some were just the way they, were brought up a certain way, couldn't were not open minded to be able to expand their vision, if you would. They think they missed out on some kind of richness to life, which, they probably did, because they didn't expand their mind and accept a different kind of outlook and worldview that is not like our own. So there's definitely something that you miss, right? So it could vary on the answer, but what I was more surprised at, how some of the quitting part is how they didn't do something sooner. And you hear it a lot in modern dating, and especially towards men, and in the dating world is more prevalent. There is a little bit into the other aspects that I've touched upon, your financial, friends, families, and acquaintances. But you hear it a lot, like, oh, I should have ended that relationship quicker. Looking back at it, I should have, X, Y, and Z. Looking back at it, I saw this and this and that. So in that aspect, in our relationship wise, we could definitely identify our mistake, but sometimes the same way with our finances, we don't do that. Like, we want to blame it on, oh, it's just my area, the job market, what they're paying here for my skill level is this, and oh, I have kids, or I have this, or there's we create these excuses. We don't have the point that I'm trying to make is that we don't have a clear set mark. We want to fluctuate it, of course, because our mind's going to want to, it knows, we all know our weaknesses, we all know where we lack, so we let things perpetuate or keep going, and we don't address it in the correct way. Our mind is going to make excuses for that action just to be able to justify that action, so we don't kind of snowball again into where our body enters a state of negative energy, where we're not eating, we're not sleeping right, which people identify as depression. So our mind doesn't want to do that, because your mind wants to keep you alive, wants you to eat, wants to keep you healthy, it wants to live, so it's gonna do these things. So that's the whole point of the episode, is to to talk more about that kind of not a negative view on, or try to spin, well, not a negative view on quitting or a positive view on quitting, is more or less like how it's sometimes okay to quit things. And the easiest way I could to men is using it like in a toxic environment, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But anyways, so what happens when you quit? Depending on what you're doing, of course. Like, I hate to say it as a man, but I remember playing basketball, and I remember quitting at some point during the match, because either I had put my anger or my frustration on the referee, the fact that I wasn't doing correctly, I was airballing my shot, I wasn't performing, but I projected it on other people instead of that I wasn't prepared. I was just maybe outmatched. When I finally did realize that it wasn't going my way for whatever reason, I gave up, and it hurts the pride a little bit, but you recover, like, your ego again. Your mind is not going to let you eventually you tell yourself the right thing, or at least where it directs you as to what it think is the right thing, and your ego kind of heals, sometimes incorrectly, sometimes falsely, but that's not the point. The point is that it makes you feel better, and then the next game you can perform better, and that's how you being better, I guess. So the same thing, I've known how to quit something like when I was in school, like I just didn't get certain things like math for me. It wasn't easy for me to get math when I was early on, just the way the curriculum, the era that I was growing in, the fact that there were so many, different ways of teaching us that changed in that 15-year period. But that's just another excuse, right? But when I was taking my math test, it was, now it's easy because I realized my where I was, the way I learned, the way it was easier for me to grab it as opposed to them. But back then it wasn't easy, whether it was beneath me or over me. That's not the point. The point is that I felt that the test wasn't, that I was frustrated. I couldn't get the answer. I just shut off and I quit. So I understand that feeling. Same thing when I tell people, like, well, have you ever quit? The first thing sometimes, like, what do you mean, a job? So we've all had. I've never. Well, again, I was gonna say I've never quit a job. I quit one job because I knew within, like I said, within, I don't even think it was an hour. I think I said like 5-10 minutes. I knew it was not for me, and that was okay for me. But I don't think I've ever quit. I've always done it the right way. But a lot of people have quit from work and are familiar with just that. Oh, I was fed up. I was being mistreated. I quit because I got another job that was better. So, in that aspect, uh, it's a positive, right? Because you in your mind, you just let go of a negative energy. You just let go of a situation where you weren't happy. Kind of leads to better things. Or you could also be like, you quit being a pushover, right? And then you quit being a pushover, and all of a sudden you start setting boundaries, and people get in shock. So when you ask the question as to what happens when you quit, it has to, when you apply it to certain circumstances, it could be such a huge positive. It could be a huge bonus to you and to us as men, when some things, like when I apply it to myself. And I've already mentioned how I quit smoking cigarettes after 20 something years. Like, when I change the question as to what happened, oh, I want to quit, to what happens, if I quit smoking cigarettes, what would be the benefit? And then once that became when I asked that question enough to myself, when it started becoming more engraved in my brain, where it knew that I really wanted, because you can't lie to yourself. You know what you want to do, and that's why it makes addiction such a horrible thing when it's a true addiction, because you wake up wanting to do better, but it's just over the addiction is so overpowering. And the way our mind works, again, is just two perfect marriages, an addiction in our brain, that when that occurs, the bond that it creates is truly amazing. When you study it, um, and again, you want to get over it, and that's the vicious cycle, where you wake up with that daily battle. And then when you fail enough, you give yourself, you just keep on beating yourself over it, because you fail so much. But the willpower is there daily, every day, every day, every day. Because we don't know how to process certain things, it could lead us into a dark area where we shouldn't be. But for me, again, I don't know. I don't even know if that, me rephrasing the question, was the reason for my quitting of smoking. But it surely wasn't no nicotine patch. It surely wasn't no, doing this and doing that. Because I tried all of that for years, and it didn't work. And I know people will be like, well, like everything, repetition is the key to success or whatever. And I've said it myself, which is true. But in this case, it wasn't that. Not because it was so far spread in between. Like, I knew, but it wasn't until I did change the question as to not, because well, what were the benefits? Yeah, I want to quit, but for what? What was it? Most of the people, the girls that I was messing with, smoke cigarettes. Most of the friends that I hanged around with smoke cigarettes. The people that I talked to at work smoke cigarettes. So it was always that kind of environment. So it was easy for me to say, well, this is it. This is just the environment, or I'm stressing, or after I drink, I have to smoke a cigarette. Now I have a beer, and I don't even have to, have a cigarette, which was one of my biggest excuses. But when people ask me, well, how did you do it? I was like, well, I really don't know. It was from 1 second to the next when I just did not want to, and haven't to this day picked up a cigarette or even want to buy or pick up a cigarette. It's just like this weird, I want to at least attribute to just a change in question, like what happens if I quit smoking cigarettes? What are the benefits? And when I had included that too with along with my fitness goals and what I wanted to do, me physically and change physically, it's when it all became beneficial towards me. And then a few months later, 5 months, 8 months later, boom, Corona happened, where it's respiratory disease. So my quitting couldn't have been better timed to stop, fucking up my lungs. I'm not saying that I haven't already through 20 plus years of smoking cigarettes, but the timing couldn't have been better. But I think I want to attribute it to the fact that I reworded the question, so my mind then started working on a solution, and it's never going to be instantaneous. It's never going to happen right away. Just like everything is going to take time for you, because it's your own personal brain. You yourself know your journey. You yourself know what is only true in your life, in your world, in your reality. But once you start asking your mind the correct question, you can overcome addiction. You can overcome a lot of situations in our lives. And that's when it's okay. Like, the whole point of the topic of the podcast, and the point of the episode is, the I know I started off with never quitting, and or never giving up, but the truth of the whole thing is that it's okay. It's okay to quit. It's okay to give up. And just like everything that we have, no matter what, it could be someone like as close to us as our family. It could be someone that we truly care, a wife, our kids, our girlfriend. It could be a job that we really like, but there's something about it that doesn't sit good with our soul, with who we are. We have to take that huge step to being able to quit those relationships and separate from those people because of the toxicity, or the fact that they just bring negative energy, or bringing it for a negative force into your life that doesn't need to be there, because you're not going to fully enjoy your journey, or situations like that, whether it be kids, like I said, work. It's a very difficult thing to do. And again, don't get me wrong, like the message is definitely out there. You hear it a lot, depending on what it is, whether it's losing your job, or sister, brother, coworker, boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever. You could find it on YouTube, you could Google it, and you get a perspective, but you get it through a hurt person. And I get it, and I've said it myself. We're all hurt. There's no one gonna be perfect. There's no one that's gonna say I knew from the moment this and that, and it's led to X, Y, and Z. A lot of people might claim that, but it might be for that person. The odds are it's like the outlier, not the common trend. So we need to repeat the message that it's okay to quit some of these things and people that are going to be around us. But how we phrase that question is how our mind's gonna work to get us that result. So we gotta switch that. And given the way society works and what society tells us, about quitting is you hear it like, quit winners never quit and quitters never win. So already, like, in society and movies, it tells you to not quit. And even in sports movies and or TV shows, so the message is like never quit, never quit, never quit, which is, I guess, it's in just the basic form of doing it. Like, yeah, I guess it's okay, but it led to everyone gets a trophy, as opposed to if you just you look back at it in a military standpoint, or in a military form. If you're getting your ass kicked, you're not going to continue. You have to be smart enough as a general to take the loss and retreat to fight another day. So quitting is okay, because if you take it to where something matters, and I think we all could agree, death is something that matters. So if generals, I mean, a good one, yes, I'm sure there's examples, and I've read some myself, of generals that have just done that. Hey, we're not gonna quit. This is where we're gonna go. And there's only a few that I think, a couple maybe, if I'm thinking about it right now, that were successful, but we're probably missing, or we're probably hearing the most glorified version of it. But most good generals have taken losses, but only to come back and get a greater victory and ultimately lead the war. So quitting is okay, but society tells men not to quit, to keep on going, that you have to stick it out with a job for 30, 40 years and get that pension just because you have to put food on the table. You have to tolerate a woman's, whatever. Or I don't want to make it, I should, hold on, let me, that you have to tolerate a certain type of woman, where you don't have to. No one has to tolerate anything. You are only indebted to yourself. But society has then deemed quitting a bad thing. So if you quit, is horrible, but try with all your energy. Or that's, like I said, it led to this kind of softening of what society is, because society tells us, like I said, that you should never quit, and quitting, you can't win and stuff like that. So I don't know if everybody knows this, but society and stuff that comes out like in popular stuff is usually wrong. So when society is like saying, hey, quitting, no, it just leads to, like I said, or yeah, like I said, it leads to just a longer period of dealing with stuff that you don't need to deal with, like with a relationship that's toxic, and going nowhere, where, or bad habits like smoking, drinking, or cocaine, or wasting time and stuff like that, just doing nothing, not being productive. Like, that stuff is okay to quit, and and that's what we have to say. And most people would say, yeah, no shit, but we don't. Look at, like movies, look at just music artists, the fact that the music that they put out, and not and the lives that they're living. Same thing with some of the movie stars. We're seeing it here with Johnny Depp and Amber, from Aquaman. So you're seeing this, what we deemed as these heroes, going even from sports stars, where they're staying in these relationships, not giving up on it as they should, because call it's grabbing the headlines, or because this is what now we deem normal, I guess. But when you see this in your media, in the people you look up to, in your YouTube influencers, in your, like I said, movies and TV shows, from every aspect, it becomes normal to accept bad behavior and to just say, well, I can't quit on her because she's going to get better. I can't quit on my kids because they are going to get better, even though they're taking me for granted and using me and abusing me. I can't quit on this job because my family is relying on me, and I mean, I'm not saying for anybody to go broke. You have to do what you have to do, but if you're at a job because your wife wants a certain Mercedes or certain bags, and that you can't do that. You're you're giving up who you are in the return for someone else to fill that part of what you're giving up, and it never works out that way. When you stay in these things and make the excuse because society tells you that if you quit, and not only society, you go into religion, into churches, and I've known where women are, and men have gone into like a religious establishment and told them about how toxic she was, and they've told the man, like, hey, you know what, you have to stick it out, you're married, the vows, and according to the church there's no separation, you got to work, and like she's out there, cheating and sleeping around, and you're like, what? The church told you to do what? You have to still stay there in this. So it's a perpetuation of just like, oh, wait, and honor this, and even though the relationship no longer has any validity or whatever, or men that know they're worth more, but because they're scared to not be succeed in their next job, they spend 10, 15, 20 years at a job that they're no longer happy for, but because it allowed them a life that is somewhat okay. Maybe they have kids with a wife or a girlfriend or whatnot, and he's comfortable. He's never going to then look for anything better because, again, he's become more accustomed to the comfort as opposed to the reaching and achieving. So he's there. He's then gonna stay there and say, I'm here to provide for my family and work within my what's armed, what's I might become a supervisor, but nothing more than that, or I might look for another area here close to me, but nothing too crazy, and similar in my pay, something that I know, something that I might be know someone where I have a little bit of an extra cushion. But you never move out of that, and you, next thing you know, you waste 30, 40, 50 years, which is one of the other things that I heard a lot from these 70s and 18-year-olds, is working at a place that they didn't want to work, but because they had a family to support, or for whatever reasons that they deemed reasons, they stood at a job for an X amount of time. And at the end of the day, it wasn't like a big old thing, but the what if comes. What if I would have done this? And they'll reflect, and that varied a lot. Like they start, some of them were self-aware enough to know that they could have done more, and they chose to fuck off some of this time, or at this job, and they should have taken some of the skills. Like, I mean, I could use myself for a few of those examples where you recognize yourself and you're like, well, this is where I let certain jobs take advantage of me, but I allowed it to. And that's a great place to be, but not a lot of men are in that position. But given, like I said, our societal structure, it tells us that we shouldn't quit, that men shouldn't quit, that we should just stay. And if we do quit, we're weak, and weak men don't belong in this society. And no, this is how how strong men become weak men, because we stay in situations that we know in our gut are inherently against our will. And when you do that enough, and when you go against that enough, eventually you're just gonna give up as a man, which is what we see in society as, and we make fun of it now, but it's very sad when you see a man's shoulders hunched over, when he doesn't care about life no more, when he's just going through the motion, and he knows his wife is cheating or his girlfriend's cheating, but he just shuts the hell up, goes to work, and kind of just goes through the motion because he's spent too much time, he's out of shape, he for X amount of reasons. But it's a sad thing when you see a man's willpower and his soul being broken. And I'm speaking from experience. And a lot of men, know what I'm talking about when you see that and have felt that, if you've ever been in that position yourself. It hurts because we all can identify it. We were all there. And when you've truly been there, when you see just someone just broken, just completely given up, and they don't see an out, they don't have an out, they don't have, they're just all out of options. They've exhausted as to what they deem every possible outlook, and it could be with kids, it could be with their money, it could be with their social circle, it could be with everything. You could see it when you could just, it's something in them that just, I think, like I said, we all know what it is when we spot it. I don't want to make it sound like it's a thing that only a few know. I think everyone could spot it, just that look, that defeatist, I keep on saying defeatist, just that broken will, that I'm done, this is as good as I'm gonna get, and I just have to, this is part of the things that I gotta suffer through, and hopefully it gets better in the future. And that's the beauty of our brain right there at work, that even in situations like that, it's always going to go to the hope, the hope that it is going to get better. And a lot of these stories that we hear in religious books, again, this is not about whether you believe or not, but it's in that hope that some of not only the religious, I went into the religious, or I said the religious books, but not only religious books, many of the works, that in that despair, when, depending on what you're reading, but in a moment of despair, that hope sprung some of the most beautiful literature we have and will continue to have. I mean, some of the stories written during the world wars, some of the stories in, what was, Shakespeare during his time, and during some of the Greek philosophers, and some of the religious books were written in times of despair, and that hope, what that inspired is just brilliance and beautiful, because that's what hope does. Hope gives you outlook for a better tomorrow. That it's not always going to be so stormy. That it's not always going to be this bad. But even in those messages, you understand and you see that they did quit, but they quit because they needed to have an end to that suffering, and then have an outlook to something better, and that hope will kick in. Your mind will have no choice but to take you into the hope. But we ourselves have to take that step to be okay to quit any kind of situation, because it's going to lead to us getting better. And that's one of the things that I wrote here. I said, don't be afraid to quit. Sometimes quitting is the best thing to ever happen. When you finally do, decide to quit, I hope it's for the focus of self-betterment, and in the overall being a better man, and being in what you deem is a better man, is what I should say, and just to be a better an overall better person. But that's in what you define as worth quitting for. And yes, there's definitely things that we shouldn't quit, like don't quit on your dream. Don't quit on trying to achieve that vision of yourself. Don't quit in having love. Don't quit in having hope. But do quit a bad habit. Do quit toxic relationships. Do quit a bad employment. Do quit on trying to save everyone. If you're not getting that in return, You know, there's certain things that, you know, quit spending all this money, quit gambling, quit buying a lot of shoes, quit buying, you know, quit making excuses. You know, the list could go on in each side, but you have to know what not to quit on and strive for, but that it's okay to quit on certain things that are not benefiting you. Like I said, toxic employment, toxic relationship, toxic friendship, anything that's not striving for you to achieve your goals, to achieve a better version of you in that future that you're trying to build. It's okay to quit, and it's gonna suck. People are gonna fall off, things are gonna happen, but that the reward is you're gonna have a better life. Hopefully you're gonna have a more fulfilled life, hopefully, and it's gonna make the path less stormy. It's not saying that it's gonna be perfect, but it's gonna give you a more groomed path, that you could see the path clearly, that you won't wander and waste your time in certain things. And again, anything that's, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but anything that's meant for you will still stick around no matter how far it goes. So don't be afraid to quit on people, because if they're meant and they really want you in their life, they will then adapt and say, hey, you know, maybe, you know, we're not friends because of something that I did. And I've seen people that have changed because that person meant, you know, something to that person. But I've also seen people never talk to each other again, and that's just the risk we have to do. Same thing with work. I've seen people quit their job and end up at worse positions, but I've also met people that have quit their jobs and gone after their dreams and succeeded with it. So it's never a clear choice, but if we make that choice whether to not quit or quit on something, that we're doing it with the emphasis as to a better employment, to the kind of circle that we want, to the kind of relationship with women that we want, to the kind of girlfriend and wife that we want, whatever. But if it's in line with that directive, don't be afraid to quit stuff that is blocking you to achieve these goals, because you could want something all you want, but if your habits and actions are doing something against that you seek, you'll never get to what you seek. It's just a fantasy, is just a want to. So if you really do want to get what you want, then start acting like and start having your actions and thoughts in a direct alignment to that directive. But the only way that's going to happen is if you remove the obstacles and the excuses to why you're not achieving that. So I hope you guys found, you know, some value in this, just, you know, to identify where it's okay and where it's not okay to quit, and make sure it's focused on and what goals you're trying to do, whether it's financially, spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever it is, that it's in alignment with that. And once you know that it's in alignment with that, don't be afraid to take action and to quit, and cut things out of your life that are not going to take you to that ultimate step. And if you found value, share the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching, for listening. Until next time.